Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And we've taken a bit of time off because we've been recovering from COVID.
We're almost recovered now, but it was not nice.
No. So a reminder to everyone to stay safe and be careful. So obviously in the 3 weeks since our last episode, Russia invaded Ukraine. And we wanted to start by saying, we're obviously so devastated by this news and all of the news that's coming out of Ukraine following the invasion. And I mean, for me particularly, I'm incredibly frustrated and sad because of how ineffective my government, the UK government, has been in terms of offering safety to Ukrainian refugees. Like, the system is so slow and so ineffective at the moment. It's unforgivable, and I do think if we have any listeners in the UK, which I don't think we have very many, but if you are there, we would just remind you can write to your MP to let them know how important the issue of Ukrainian safety is to all of us, and hopefully keep the pressure up to try and get the process made swifter and a lot more effective.
Yeah, and of course we're going to talk about the royal response to this crisis, which I think has been very interesting to watch unfold.
Yeah.
So Prince Harry and Meghan were the first royals to publicly acknowledge and react to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They put up a statement on their Archewell website that read, "Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and all of us at Archewell stand with the people of Ukraine against this breach of international and humanitarian law and encourage the global community and its leaders to do the same." So that was on the 24th of February, which was the day that Russia invaded.
Yeah, and on that same day, the rest of the family announced a series of royal tours.
It was so strange.
So weird.
Like, there was no nod to what was going on whatsoever. It was just like, Charles and Camilla are going to go to Ireland, and Edward and Sophie are going somewhere, and Will and Kate are going to the Caribbean.
Yeah, Will and Kate said, "We are so excited to visit Belize, Jamaica and the Bahamas next month as we mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. We can't wait to meet people in all three countries, celebrate local cultures and understand more about innovative work being done across communities."
Yeah, and we've talked about this tour before. I think on our last episode we were saying that this is quite clearly an effort by the royal family to dissuade other Commonwealth realms from following in Barbados' footsteps by removing the Queen as head of state, as Barbados did last year. But the timing of this announcement just felt so off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously royal tours take a lot of planning, and the kind of announcing of that, I assume, is also scheduled and planned out quite carefully.
Well, Tom, listen, if Lady Gaga can hold off on announcing her Chromatica Ball World Tour, I think Will and Kate could have cooled it. Yeah. Not even Will and Kate, the whole royal family.
This is not a time-sensitive announcement at all. They could have waited a week.
A possible theory for why they may have decided to go ahead with the announcement was that they may have been looking for some big shiny news to distract from reports at the time that Shout, the crisis text helpline for people needing urgent mental health support that Will, Kate, Harry and Meghan had backed through the Heads Together programme, was giving third-party researchers access to millions of messages from children and other vulnerable users, despite promising that they would never do that.
Yeah.
That had come out in The Observer the day before or a couple of days before.
Yeah, I think it was the 20th that the story was first reported, and then, so then this was the 24th. But of course, the fact that Russia had invaded Ukraine meant that no one was really talking about this anymore anyway, so it still seems pretty baffling to me that they put out the tour announcement when they did.
A couple of days later, though, Will and Kate did take to Twitter again to tweet about Ukraine. It made them the first senior working royals to comment on the crisis, and they said, "In October 2020, we had the privilege to meet President Zelensky and the First Lady to learn of their hope and optimism for Ukraine's future. Today we stand with the President and all of Ukraine's people as they bravely fight for that future."
Yeah, and President Zelensky replied on Twitter a few days later, "Elena and I are grateful to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and royal family at this crucial time when Ukraine is courageously opposing Russia's invasion. They stand by our country and support our brave citizens. Good will triumph." I do think it's noticeable that the Cambridge's statement doesn't actually say Russia has invaded Ukraine. And I think, like, it does maybe bear having in the back of your mind who in the royal family actually refers to the invasion, because I think language does matter around this war.
Yes. So Prince Charles was up next. He made a speech in Southend on the 1st of March, and he was there to attend a council meeting because this seaside town was being conferred its status as a city, and this had kind of been a long-held wish of the Tory MP David Ames, who was fatally stabbed in a terrorist attack in October 2021. And while Charles was making a speech about this, he said, "What we saw in the terrible tragedy in Southend was an attack on democracy, on an open society, on freedom itself. We are seeing those same values under attack today in Ukraine in the most unconscionable way. In the stand we take here, we are in solidarity with all those who are resisting brutal aggression."
I thought, yeah, this was like a strong statement from Charles. Like, again, like not naming Russia, but actually referring to like aggression, brutal aggression. It seemed like more rooted in the reality of the situation maybe than what Will and Kate had said. But in the days that have followed since then, we've seen Charles and Camilla and Will and Kate meeting with Ukrainian communities in the UK, specifically in London. So Charles and Camilla went to the Ukrainian Catholic Cathedral in London, meeting with the Archbishop Kenneth Nowakowski, and they laid sunflowers, which is the national flower of Ukraine, on the altar there.
Did you see that after this visit, Camilla made a donation to the Daily Mail's appeal?
No, I didn't.
They are running a refugee appeal, the newspaper, and she apparently, well, her spokesman confirmed that she made a private contribution to this appeal.
Interesting, like, appeal to decide to support, but Camilla putting her money where her mouth is.
Camilla again cozying up with the Daily Mail, knowing how instrumental they can be to ensuring she is a popular queen when the time comes.
I mean, Daily Mail's evil, but they're not miracle workers. I don't think she's going to be a popular queen. But yeah, I know what you mean. Will and Kate have also been out. They went to the Ukrainian Cultural Centre, also in London, and they met volunteers who are filling lorries with aid to support the humanitarian relief effort.
Yeah, Kate wore a lovely blue Alexander McQueen jumper, and the pair of them had yellow and blue, like the Ukrainian flag, solidarity badges, and they took trays of chocolate brownies and granola bars that had been homemade at Kensington Palace for the volunteers working at this centre in Holland Park.
This detail about the granola bars and the brownies is like, it's the kind of thing that I do find quite annoying in this kind of situation, but I think it maybe is quite good at summing up like the effect of the royals, because I think against the background of an invasion, homemade granola bars seem to me pretty pointless and tend to just highlight, for those of us who are kind of watching it from afar, the luxury of time and money that these people have, that they're like, well, let's make some homemade granola bars to help, as though that's the most effective thing that they can do. But for the people who actually received them, they may well be viewed as touching gifts that represent the well wishes not just of Will and Kate, but of like the whole British public that Will and Kate represent. So I suppose I'm not comfortable just writing them off as like completely pointless, which is like my first instinct. But I think we kind of have had this conversation about like when Will and Kate do events, like the people who meet them are often absolutely delighted, even if we think that the royals aren't doing any kind of real work.
Yeah, and I think particularly in this situation, I'm certainly not comfortable policing how people should be reacting to a crisis like this. And we'll get into that more in a minute. Yeah. Because obviously the big royal story of the week was Will's misreported comments.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's seen it at this point. But, well, as many of you know, there is an official pool system or rota in place for royal media coverage. We talked about this a lot, obviously, in relation to Harry and Meghan and the royal rota, but it involves a selection of representatives from across the British press who are assigned to cover royal engagements. And for smaller engagements, especially Kate's or the Cambridge ones, there's typically only one journalist who will attend. usually with a photographer or a camera person or whatever. And then they will share all their material and reporting with the rest of the pool, giving everyone in the Royal Rota equal access. And on the occasion of this Ukrainian Cultural Centre visit, the Daily Express's royal reporter Richard Palmer was reportedly the one assigned to cover the event, and it appears he made an error in his reporting because the original report included this paragraph talking about Will. He said Britons were more used to seeing conflict in Africa and Asia. It's very alien to see this in Europe. We are all behind you, he said. But he added that he, like many, wanted to do more to help. We feel so useless, he said.
So this is then published by the Press Association and the Mail and the Mirror and everyone. And it went viral after the Independent's race correspondent Nadine White tweeted it. And that was followed by a criticism from Bernice King, who's Martin Luther King's daughter, author Sholomos Shogbamemu, and CNN journalist Jake Tapper. And the next day, ITV released a clip of Will's remarks that he made while he was at the centre, and it didn't include any reference to Africa and Asia. What he said is, everyone is horrified by what they're seeing. The news every day, it's almost unfathomable to witness this. For our generation, it's very alien to see this in Europe. We're all right behind you.
And Richard Palmer shared the clip with the comment, the Duke of Cambridge on war in Europe. He doesn't appear to have compared it to conflicts in Africa and Asia. In the chaos, a remark he made was misheard, starting a social media storm. Apologies for reporting that online. And
a very mild apology for what was like a very big story.
The Press Association later issued a clarification, removing the reference to Africa and Asia, and made it known that it had been based on information provided by a non-PA pool reporter. And a royal source told the Telegraph that the spreading of this misheard line around the world had been unfortunate, but that the video speaks for itself in correcting the record.
Right. I mean, like, this sparked like a minor storm, I'd say, on social media, possibly even a major storm if you're in the royal watching circles. Like, after the incorrect quote and information had been published, a lot of people were calling Will out for dog whistle racism, saying that his comments were unforgivably naive for a future king, that he was dehumanising the people of Africa and Asia and ignoring the UK's history of colonial violence. And this is only a couple of weeks before his great big tour of former British colonies, so it's not a good look.
Yeah, and it's coming at a time, this follows a few weeks of media commentators making similarly ignorant comments. I'm sure you've seen them about how shocking the war in Ukraine is, because this isn't a developing third world nation. These are civilized people who watch Netflix and use Instagram and look like us.
Yeah, like, so much gross language around the situation. And I think for many people, Will's comments are like of a piece with this kind of pernicious racism. It's language that suggests that war is normal or natural in places like Africa, Asia, the Middle East and Latin America, while it's unnatural in Europe. Whereas, like, in reality, Europe is responsible for a lot of the most brutal wars in history.
I think, though, this whole storm, as we're calling it, is complicated by the fact that Will's comments have been paraphrased and falsely so, it turned out. Like, there wasn't even a direct quote from him about being more used to seeing conflict in Africa and Asia, yet it still got huge pushback and people took it as further evidence of the royal family's racism. And I do think part of that is undoubtedly aided by Will's history of ignorant comments, stuff we've talked about on the podcast before, like we are very much not a racist family, real humdinger, or his speech blaming population growth in Africa for the loss of wildlife. Things like that mean that we can believe he would say something like this, which is itself a problem for the royals. And, even if he didn't make any reference to Africa or Asia, the line about it being very alien to see this in Europe does suggest some implicit bias. Like, does this mean it's not alien to see this outside of Europe?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the reaction did strike me as slightly overblown, to be honest. Even though I think you and I are always among the first people who are eager to criticise Will when he fucks up.
Yeah, because I think it's worth noting the context in which these words were shared. Like, it was a casual conversation with Ukrainian people. It wasn't prepared remarks as part of a formal address in any way.
I think as well, though, we should note that it was in a casual conversation like this with paramedics in Ireland that got him in trouble at the start of the pandemic when he made that fucking stupid joke about spreading coronavirus, which, you know, makes it even more clear that this guy is not great at small talk and maybe needs to get a handle on that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of conflict in Europe just during Will's lifetime. Like, you've got the Troubles in Northern Ireland, you've got the Bosnian War, you've got the crisis in Crimea, and, you know, there's loads more. But this is the biggest attack by one state against another in Europe since World War II. And in that sense, I can understand why he would describe it as alien. I think, like, as well, and we'll kind of talk about this in a bit, but, like, the way the information is reaching us is, like, unprecedented as well, because you have so much more online than you would have had in the past.
Yeah, and I think part of that is what makes this so complex, because there's obviously been a lot of talk about what the royals are doing. Are they doing enough? And, you know, I would say for you and me, the default position is that the royals are literally never doing enough.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it's maybe important to acknowledge that it's really hard to know what to do in this situation. And clearly the royals are fumbling as they figure out what their response is to an unprecedented situation like this. You know, unprecedented in a number of ways. Like, the last time the royals had to react to a European war of this scale, there was no internet or social media. People weren't forensically analysing every bit of small talk they uttered.
Yeah, like, we're not in the business of defending royals. That's absolutely not what we're here to do. And so we do hear all the criticisms. Like, yes, as a future head of state, Will should not appear ignorant of wars in Europe. And it is especially important because monarchists like to emphasise that royals are trained from birth for their positions as, like, statesmen and stateswomen. Like, you know, these are all people where it's very valid to say you should do better. You should always do better. Having said that, part of his role is also diplomacy and talking to people. And he was talking to a Ukrainian person about the invasion of their country. And his message was that this is horrific for Ukrainians and we're all thinking of them. So I don't think that this is the moment to start rattling off statistics about other European wars or showing how much you know about, like, European history. Like, what was important was to have a conversation with the person who was standing in front of him and not with everybody on the internet.
I would certainly hope to see the reporters and commentators who were so quick to defend Will on this one applying the same diligence to quotes from the Sussexes, which are frequently taken out of context, that, you know, we all realise and acknowledge the importance of reading quotes in their correct context.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes only when it's Will and Kate. But I think we do need to talk about what the Queen has been doing and saying or not saying with, like, a slightly heavier hand than we've applied to Will.
Yeah, so clearly other members of her family have made speeches and had casual comments about this, but the Queen let it be known that she had made a rare private donation to the Disasters Emergency Committee Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, who thanked her for her generous donation in a tweet. And the Sun later confirmed with Buckingham Palace that the Queen had made this donation, although it wouldn't disclose the amount.
She also postponed a planned diplomatic reception on the advice of the Foreign Secretary, but she hasn't issued any statement on the crisis.
It did seem to me that most people were satisfied, however, that she subtly signalled her support for the people of Ukraine with a display of blue and yellow flowers on her desk during a meeting with Justin Trudeau at Windsor Castle this week.
I mean, fucking hell. Like, this is so ridiculous, and it, like, really annoyed me. Like, you've got people, like, hammering the Cambridges and Charles to speak out, and then they're content for the Queen's courtiers to just tell journalists to point out the fucking floral arrangement in the background of a photo.
I think this is the kind of whimsical symbolism that people have come to expect from the Queen and that people like from the Queen. Like, because her role is supposedly apolitical, she has to speak through a brooch or a hat or a bouquet in this instance, like whatever it may be, rather than expressing her actual feelings or any actual sentiment for the people who are suffering.
Yeah.
But this is so different from like her like shady brooch when Donald Trump comes to see her or whatever.
A fucking invasion requires more than a shady brooch or a bunch of flowers, definitely. Like, why is it okay for Charles and Will to speak out, but the Queen has to do it in this way?
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with having these blue and yellow flowers. It's a nice gesture.
Yeah.
But she can also back it up with words. It just seems like a bizarre strategy to me. Like, if she has to remain staunchly neutral, why did she give the charity the nod to broadcast her donation like this?
Yeah.
Is it because people find this kind of communication through symbols more charming or more palatable from the Queen than a statement? I just... like, why is it?
Do people think this kind of incredibly subtle gesture is like an example of her like masterful statesmanship? Like, it's so stupid. But I was also wondering, is she communicating in these kind of subtle ways because condemning Russia outright is like made more complicated for her by the fact that her cousin Prince Michael of Kent had apparently a close relationship with the Kremlin. Like, it was only last year that he was filmed at a meeting in which undercover reporters were told that he could be hired to make representations to the Kremlin, and a friend of his described him as Her Majesty's unofficial ambassador to Russia.
Although the Express reported that Prince Michael of Kent has returned the Order of Friendship, which is one of the highest orders in Russia and one that he received from the former Russian president Dmitry Medvedev in 2009 for his work on Anglo-Russo relations.
So maybe that's not a problem anymore.
But just to go back to what the Queen is or isn't doing as head of state, like, the Irish president has spoken out about the crisis. You can express sympathy for people who are suffering, as the Queen has often done in the cases of natural disasters and things like that. But this seems to me like, if it is about keeping her like seeming apolitical, whatever, that seems to me like a ridiculous series of hoops for a head of state to have to jump through to express solidarity and sympathy with suffering people.
Yeah, in the fucking 21st century, all of this, like, I mean, it just shows you how archaic, if you needed any more examples, how archaic and out of place the institution of monarchy is in the modern world in like fucking 2022. It's ridiculous. And it's embarrassing for this country.
You know what else is embarrassing for this country?
I can't think of one thing in particular. There's too many.
How about Prince Andrew?
Yeah, that he'd be high on the list, yeah.
The Sun reported last week that Prince Charles is going to loan Prince Andrew the money to pay his settlement to Virginia Roberts Giuffre and save the family honour.
Yes, so Matt Wilkinson reported that Charles will cover most of the agreed £7 million, with the Queen also chipping in, but that no public funds will be used.
And this is coming from sources, by the way. This isn't an official confirmation that no public funds will be used, or that is even the sum. Like, the Telegraph reported that the deal is worth around £12 million in its story on Charles loaning Andrew the money. So, you know, none of this is, especially the figure, still not confirmed. But the judge in the case, Lewis Kaplan, had imposed a deadline of March 17th for Andrew to pay the settlement to Virginia. Otherwise, the case would go to trial. So Andrew had to get his skates on. He had been relying on the sale of his £17 million Swiss ski chalet to cover the settlement, but the sale hasn't been completed yet. So the Sun says that is the reason why he needed to get this loan from his brother.
And a source said there were family discussions about how to take a little from here and a little from there. Once it, i.e. the money from the chalet, hits his bank account, he can pay back his brother and whoever else has lent him the money. But that payment to Virginia has to be paid on time. He can't rely on selling the chalet. Too many things can go wrong, and the court won't wait for property queries. Fucking hell, like, referring to it as taking a little from here and a little from there when you're talking about a multi-million pound settlement.
That's the kind of finances these people have.
Yeah.
A friend of Andrew also said that he has no income or money to repay a bank loan, so the family is the only way to guarantee the payment. And very interestingly, according to the Sun, if Andrew fails to repay this loan to Charles, the money will be deducted from his inheritance from the Queen, who, the paper reminds us, has privately funded Andrew's legal battle all along.
So if he just waits long enough, Mummy will pay. Just what he wanted all along, perhaps.
The Sun also reported that it was Charles who told Andrew to settle last month after lawyers said Andrew would have to give a witness statement in this case, because Charles supposedly feared it would be a repeat of the Newsnight interview, which I think we were all sort of looking forward to that. But Charles, perhaps wisely, realised the royals couldn't handle another one of those.
Yeah, like actually quite sensible from Charles. But this would seem to chime with the kind of theories that we were discussing about the Queen's curious statement on the eve of Accession Day. This is the one where she said that it was her express wish that Camilla be Queen Consort when she dies. And we were wondering, what has Charles promised to do in order to get this, like, ringing endorsement of Camilla?
Is it possibly in exchange for a very substantial loan to cover his brother's arse?
It certainly seems that way from this reporting.
Since you mentioned Camilla, though, on International Women's Day, Camilla hosted a reception for female leaders at Clarence House and invited Emerald Fennell.
Incredible.
Emerald Fennell, who, as we know, played Camilla in the most recent series of The Crown.
Yeah, and I mean, we loved her performance as well. It was so good. But, like, I do feel like Charles has sort of managed to give the world the impression that there would be some kind of implosion if the royals were ever to meet their crown counterparts. Like, I remember when he, like, reportedly banned actors from the Crown from attending the launch of the Netflix David Attenborough series that he was at. But apparently Camilla doesn't care at all, which I love.
Well, as you said when I texted you about this, she's the only member of this family with any balls.
Yeah, I stand by that. But she gave a speech at this event, and she said, It is reassuring to know that if I should fall off my perch at any moment, my fictional alter ego is here to take over. So, Emerald, be prepared.
They're on first name terms.
Yeah, Emerald and Camilla.
They even had a cozy little chat. But Emerald told the Telegraph, you know what, I'm going to be very discreet, because if I've learned anything, it's loose lips sink ships.
She's so fucking posh. It is really, like, no surprise to me that they got on seemingly so well.
Yeah, and I think this was a very smart move by Camilla.
Oh, yeah.
Camilla making lots of tactical moves recently.
Yeah, go Camilla. I mean, no.
Wouldn't say I support all of them, but I can see that the game is afoot.
And it's like, well, it's nice to see, like, someone in the royal family doing something a bit differently as well. Because a lot of it has become quite, like, tried and tested, and everyone's very cautious and stuff. But
I would say getting into bed with the Daily Mail is very much tried and tested. But
yeah, that's true. Okay, I take that back. Yeah. But, okay, what have we got coming up? We've got the Commonwealth Day Service on Monday, and Buckingham Palace has announced that the Queen will not be attending, which is a pretty big development.
Yeah, the Telegraph said that it is understood that the decision was taken for her comfort, bearing in mind the car journey from Windsor to Westminster Abbey and the hour-long service to sit through. Because this also ties into the fact that the Queen has said she will no longer be living in Buckingham Palace, that she will be permanently residing in Windsor Castle.
Yeah.
But she has asked Charles to represent her at the Commonwealth Day Service, which I was kind of thinking, like, doesn't he always go to these things? But in any case, the soft launch of King Charles continues apace.
Yeah. Well, and Kate and Will visit the Irish Guards at the St. Patrick's Day Parade for the first time in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that'll be just
another
before...
green coat to look forward to, Tom.
Oh, yeah, you must be very excited.
I certainly am.
But yeah, that'll be just before they start their tour, the royal tour in Belize.
They will be back, though, in time for the Thanksgiving service honouring Prince Philip at Westminster Abbey on March 29th. Unlike Harry and Meghan, who confirmed through a spokesperson this week that they will not be attending.
They haven't given a reason why, but we can kind of assume that this is due to Harry's ongoing legal battle with the Home Office over his security protection.
Yeah. And I do think this was kind of awkward timing, because this news was reported immediately after the news of the Queen confirming she wouldn't be attending the Commonwealth Day Service.
Yeah.
Which seems like the kind of clash that the royal households would have previously sought to avoid.
Yeah, because you don't want to get kind of loads of announcements of the royals not doing things one after the other. We'll probably be back in a couple of weeks to discuss everything that's happened. Thank you so much for listening.
And we hope you stay safe and have a great couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye. I care about Camilla. Morning, noon and night I care about her.